good day, good evening, good night, wherever you're dialing in from. Appreciate you dialing in for another one of our video series. We are looking at session 6, unwavering determination. Okay, so we jumped ahead a little bit because now we're on chapter 13. Remember the last video was on chapter 7, right? So we were in the middle of the campaigns to conquer the land. And now we fast forwarding to the part where, the war is essentially over. And now it's time to divide up the land. Okay, so we have to look at that because, again, just like looking at the unwavering determination, we're looking at a special person. Caleb is his name. And Caleb is one of two men that stuck around from the last generation. If you remember, Joshua and Caleb were the two men, the two spies that came back and said, look, the land is ready. Let's go get it. And the other 10 spies, they were scared. And they said, no, we shouldn't do that at all. As a result of their failing and their unfaithfulness to God in that sense, because God was ready to give them that land, that generation. God said, okay, you guys just going to sit this out and let the next generation receive the blessing. And seeing how Caleb and Joshua were the ones that were all in on God's plan, and he told them, you guys are going to stick around and see what happens. So anyway, so jumping ahead, so now we're looking at chapter. Chapter 13 serves as a dividing point where chapters 1 and 2 dealt with the capturing of Canaan and the land. 13:24 deals with the distribution of the lands, right, and how all that unfolded. Chapter 14 focuses on Caleb's inheritance, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so question: what have you learned about trusting God's timing? I have learned that my timing is nowhere near His. So I would feel, from my standpoint, His time is either too soon or too late. Or it doesn't come because it's not how I envision it, right? Or what I've asked for. So, but what I have learned is God's time is always perfect. Where I feel that I may be blessed doing this, He may say, I'm going to bless you with so much more. So, God's His timing is so much better than mine. And again, I get it wrong just about 99% of the time. The other 1% is me waiting. So, anyway, so you may have a different experience. I don't know. All right, let's get into this first part. First of 3, obedience, Joshua 14:1-5. The Israelites received their portion that the priest Eleazar, Joshua, son of Nun, and the family heads of the Israelite tribes gave them in the land of Canaan. Their inheritance was by lot, as the Lord commanded through Moses for the 9.5 tribes. Because Moses had given the inheritance to the 2.5 tribes beyond the Jordan, but he gave no inheritance among them to the Levites. The descendants of Joseph became 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. No portion of the land was given to the Levites except the cities to live in, along with the pasture lands of their cattle and livestock. So the Israelites did as the Lord commanded Moses, and they divided up the land. Now, let's keep things in mind. Obviously, everybody's going to be jockeying for the best farmland, the best pastures, and that kind of stuff, right? You wouldn't want anything that's arid or desert, right? You want the stuff down by the river, right? But where it's talking about the lots and stuff like that, we just got to keep in mind that looking at my notes, God was in complete control of this whole process. Okay, so now if our God here, let's keep in mind, he was so aware of everything going on, and good or bad, with His people, to the point that He knew someone stole from Him with the whole case with Achan back with this city of Jericho. If he is that aware and sensitive to everything going on, He is making sure that everything works to His plan, right? And His ultimate goal, which is this nation that will prosper and eventually lead to the cross. Okay, so he is right in the middle of this whole thing. While we are not sure about the specifics of the process, the tribe's name likely taken from one vessel, a match to the description, particular boundaries pulled from another container. Again, it may have been chance on their eyes, but God knew what he was doing the whole time. Now, as we mentioned, we talked about the tribes that were the 9.5 tribes, right? And you're probably saying, well, wait a minute, there's 12 tribes, right? Remember, one is the priestly tribe. They didn't get nothing because of their duties. They're set aside, but they are taken care of. So the other ones, if we look back at Numbers 32, Moses blessed the contingent that was a blessing to those two tribes. When we look at this, the whole thing with Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. Reuben and Gad, when we look at them, Moses' blessing was contingent on those tribes crossing the Jordan and assisting other tribes in conquering Canaan. So he said, yeah, I will go ahead and bless this area to you here on this side, but you got to help the other tribes when it comes time. And we see that in Numbers 32. So that's where this comes in, and it's worth noting when we look at this. Nobody was left out of this process, right? That's what's important. Question: how was dividing the land a demonstration of trust in God and his wisdom? Well, again, if I'm among many, and you're telling me I get free land, I'm gonna do everything I can to get the choice land. Right? I'm gonna do everything I can to get that land down, that bountiful, good pasture land, good farming land down there by the river, good climate, all that stuff. Right? I want the most ideal stuff. I don't want the rocky, hilly, the mountainside, or nothing like that. That's me thinking. But again, I would have to set my own selfishness aside and trust God that whatever he provides for me, he will bless me with that. That is faith, right? So, again, these people, he has been there with them through the desert, through the wandering in the wilderness, and then through the battle and claiming the land. There's nothing to suggest that he was going to abandon them and shake his hand and say, here's your land. I'm done with you. I'm going back home. No, he was with them from day one, and he would be with them until they choose otherwise, right? Until, sadly, it comes time for judgment. But again, they had to trust that process. And that's what's more important. It's the trust, the security, the promise that God had given to his people. That's pretty amazing, is it not? All right, looking at the second part. Now we're going to get into this dude, Caleb, right? Second part, devotion. Chapter 14, 6 through 9. The descendants of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal. And Caleb's son, Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite said to him, you know what the Lord promised Moses and the man of God at Kadesh Barnea about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the Lord's servant, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to scout the land and brought back an honest report. My brothers who went out with me caused the people to lose heart, but I followed the Lord my God completely. On that day, Moses swore to me, the land where you have set foot will be an inheritance for you and your descendants forever, because you have followed the Lord my God completely. Wow. Okay, so Caleb says forward, and of course he's got, he's got, it's not that he was griping nobody else took his land or anything, but he's making a case based on the promises of the past, right? So Moses promised Caleb, hey, where you step, that will be your inheritance. Okay, so, and then he clearly says that, the land where you have set foot will be your inheritance, because he went out and he spoke of that. Now, Caleb, he scouted out the places of the most concern, which was the lands of the Anakim, which would be the giants of the land, right? And he came back and said, it's all good. Let's go get it, right? Caleb was fearless in his young age, right? So, and Moses said, you know what? When it's time to come, that will be your land, right? So And what is going on here is Caleb is coming forward and saying, hey, this is the promise that was made. He is making a case. It'd be like him walking up and he had a deed to the land. The promise made by Moses and the promise made by God, obviously is through God alone, not necessarily Moses himself. He can hold it up and say, hey, based on this testimony, that land is mine. So that's where he was at. So unlike the 10 fearful spies, Caleb had followed the Lord completely, and that's without question. His heart had not melted, his faith in God has stood firm in prospect of obstacles in Canaan when confronting the negative attitudes of his fellow Israelites. So he didn't fall in line with the other spies, right? 12 of them went out, 10 came back scared. And Caleb is talking to Joshua, who is the leader of the people, and who also came back saying, hey, this is a land worth taking. So remember, those two men, they were allowed to enter the promised land. So these men, they're probably 80, 90 years old. So we know Caleb is, he's in his 80s. And the promise that he made that he would be in the promised land and he would cross the Jordan, well, that pretty much assured that he would be around long enough to see it and take it, and he would be healthy enough to see and fulfill that promise. That's the kind of God that we worship, is it not? Awesome. All right, question. What does it look like to follow the Lord wholeheartedly? Wow, that could be difficult because sometimes, especially me, I put too much thinking into what I'm doing. And sometimes, and other times I act on impulse without thinking, right? The bottom line is I do a lot of thinking or I do impulse, and I need to do more praying. But I know some people who follow wholeheartedly and at the drop of a hat, and it's amazing seeing how God works in that regard. And he does, and God works with his individual children effectively all the time. And so it's just amazing things seeing how that looks in my life is those days whenever I feel and I know that I am in, trusting God and his will. Man, everything falls into place almost to a point, miracle after miracle after miracle. And it's just an amazing process. And all I could do is stop and say, thank you, God, for everything and everyone in my life. And hopefully you have those moments of where you follow the Lord completely and you're rewarded for that. And I'm sure that you have. In fact, I would say, yeah, you were if you did that, right? But it's kind of hard. Sometimes you do it without thinking or without knowing it, right? It's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes that does happen. All right, looking at the last part, and then we'll wrap up. And so inheritance, 14, 10, 15, Caleb continues to make his case. As you see, the Lord has kept me alive for 45 years as he promised, since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel was journeying in the wilderness. Here I am today, 85 years old. I am still strong today as I were the day Moses sent me out. Wow, I wish I was strong at 80. I hope it'd be awesome for me to be strong at 85 as I was in 40 or 45. That'd be pretty amazing. So, and he said, my strength for battle and for daily tasks is now as it was then. Then he's very strong and vigor. Now give me the hill country the Lord has promised me on that day, because you heard then that the Anakim are there, as well as the large fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord has promised. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as an inheritance. Therefore, Hebron still belongs to Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, as the inheritance today, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, completely. Hebron's name used to be Kiriath Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. After this, the land had rest from war. All right. So, Caleb made a good case. And he said, look, I am strong. I'm going to fight for my land. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take it. Right? I'll do whatever I have to. I will take the most formidable land, the land that nobody wants. So everybody, I would think that in this testimony that some people did not want to approach that land, being that the giants, the Anakins, live there, right? Land of the giants. I'm pretty sure some people hesitated to live there. Not Caleb. Caleb, again, being completely trusting God, said, I'll take it. I will take the hill country. I will take this, and it would become a very important and strategic location, which was Hebron. And Caleb did not hesitate. Joshua did not hesitate to honor that promise. Right? He was there. He saw it. And here he is 40 years later. And hey, okay, this is a promise fulfilled, which is pretty amazing. The Bible is replete with many instances like this where God fulfilled his promise to his people, to individuals, regardless of time. And that's what we have to focus on. God kept his word. All right, so looking at the notes here, the Lord faithfully kept his promise that 2 faithful spies would enter the promised land. Moses had recorded this promise for God to Caleb in Numbers 14:24. Very important. So Caleb expressed confident faith in requesting this hill country. He wanted the very land that had caused the other 10 spies to melt in fear. Yeah, remember, he wanted that. Caleb possessed confident faith God wanted in the biggest challenge available. Yeah, he didn't back down. He didn't shirk away from any of his responsibilities. He wanted the biggest challenge, and he got rewarded for it. All right, good deal. All right, so looking at summarizing here, summarizing. Number one, we will face daily opportunities to obey or disobey God's instructions. Yes, daily as we go through life. 2, we can be assured that God knows and rewards those who follow him wholeheartedly. Amen. 3, we can be assured of God's presence and aid when we follow him wholeheartedly. Yes, we can. Amen. Right? Looking at someone like Caleb, Caleb is a very good example of what we do and how we're rewarded wholeheartedly when we follow God completely. Okay? And again, he stuck up and he was following God completely, and God rewarded him completely. That's the most important part. Okay. Thank you for watching. As always, appreciate you watching one of our videos. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below the video. Like and subscribe to the channel. That way, every time a video is posted, you will be notified when those videos post. Okay. And as always, we'd love to have you here at Webb Baptist. We meet on Wednesday nights for Bible study. And then Sunday mornings, of course, we meet for our Connect Sunday School groups, go over our lessons and do the study and the prayer and the talking. And then we go out for the hour of worship. And we'd love to have you here as an honored guest. If you cannot make it to Webb Baptist, by all means, get plugged in to a Bible-based church and find out what God's plan is for you today. You'll be a blessing to that church, and that church will be a blessing to you. And I guarantee you, if you follow God completely and wholeheartedly, he will give you a just reward. I guarantee it. Okay? Until next time, take care. God bless.